Hello, good people of the YouTubian kind. How are ya? I hope you're well. Me, I'm doing fine. This video is the first video in a series that I'll probably upload maybe once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, where basically I show you what I've been dicking around with. And by that I mean, sometimes I'll come into Bitwig and I'll just load up sounds, or I'll load up a pattern, a MIDI pattern of some kind, and I'll just start adding a bunch of crazy effects to it. I'll mod them in interesting ways, and I do that as just an exercise in outside the box thinking, because I think that's kind of what Bitwig is all about, is really pushing the boundaries of any genre, really getting you to step outside of the norms of what a DAW can do. And I think that's an important exercise, not just for me, but for you guys too. If you're you know, a creative artist of any kind, then you'll already know that pushing the boundaries is kind of the whole point of anything, isn't it? Okay, and so let's start off pretty light. I haven't done anything really too insane here, and we'll take a look at what I've done. I'll describe it to you. I hope there's some techniques that I've implemented here that you maybe never thought of doing before, and I hope you take away something from this. And if you've created anything of your own that's super insane, just something that's a killer, and you want to share, email it to me or leave it in the comment section, and I'll make a video about it, because that's what it's all about for us folks here. It's all about education, and it's all about Bitwig. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, so essentially what I've done is I've loaded up my sub, and if you've seen my video on making sub bass, and also, you know, then this is easy to describe, where it's just basically I loaded in my sub. I played, every track is playing a B. Okay, and it doesn't change, as you can see. There's just one single B note throughout the entire 8-bar loop that I've gone and created. Okay, and I've doubled it, and so on the one, I have added a resonator bank. Okay, and the resonator bank is tuned to a B, so every frequency on here is tuned so that it's sympathetic to the harmonics of the B note. Okay, and then I've taken an audio sidechain and I've used the kick drum that's right here, that plays every bar, as the input signal. So every time the kick hits, it spikes this audio sidechain, and the audio sidechain is modifying the amount on an LFO, another LFO mod. So every time the kick drum hits, the amount on this LFO goes from 0% all the way up to 100% and back down again. Okay, and how fast that happens depends on your attack and release. In this case, maybe I'll even turn down the attack a bit more. In this case, it just brings it up from 0 to 100 and back down. And then the LFO is modulating this, basically all of these frequencies at the same time by using the frequency master and bringing it up an octave and back down an octave. Okay, so let's have a listen to what that sounds like. Yeah, so you can see that every time the kick drum happens, these things jump and they kind of flutter back and forth, almost like a dribbling basketball, right? Each one of these things, which is pretty cool. Okay, and then I've just doubled the sub bass, where this one doesn't have any effects, so that we can kind of retain the sub frequencies while this one's doing that kind of crazy basketball bouncy thing. This is just a kick. Nothing happening there. It's just literally a simple kick. Maybe I'll turn that up, go like this, so it's a little more clicky. Okay, so nothing crazy happening there. This again is just a snare drum. If you're wondering why all this crap is on there, I've made my own drum kit where each one of these samples, or each one of these pieces of the drum kit, has a 128 on it. And if you haven't made yourself a 128 out of all your favorite drum samples, I suggest you do it. I have a video that describes how to do it, but basically I can load up this see, I call it AVA snare selector. Okay, and so I load that up in my drum snare section of my drum kit, and then I use a note pitch shifter. So now I can use this coarse knob to cycle through all my different snare drum samples that I like until I find the one that's appropriate, and I just leave the knob there. So I can write out the snare drum pattern in MIDI and then use this knob to kind of find the right snare drum sample instead of me having to go into the browser, load one up, listen to it, and go, nope, and then so on and so forth. It's just a quick way to do it, but that's nothing crazy. I'm just explaining that you should make these, and you can watch the video on that if you like to, but it's just a snare drum. So let's have a listen now. Yeah, nothing crazy. Again, this isn't crazy either. This is just adding trap hats because I felt like it was appropriate. Right? And so this one's a little bit more crazy. And basically what I've done here is I've taken a trap hat pattern, okay? So you can tell by looking at those that they were supposed to be trap hats, and look, it's even called hi-hat closed, okay? Because I didn't change the name of it. But if I double click on it, I replaced this this block here in the drum machine where that note is playing with a multi-sample called Japan bass organ. Whatever the hell a Japan bass organ is. You think it'd be like Japanese bass organ. No, Japan bass organ. So anyway, I loaded up that multi-sample. Before this multi-sampler, I put a note pitch shifter, because then, since this is only playing one single note, right, the whole time, it would be pretty lame because it would just play one of these samples over and over again. So I load up a note pitch shifter so that basically using the semitones, you could choose different notes to play without having to rewrite the MIDI. And so, and I wanted to automate that so that I don't have to go and, you know, hold this down or write an automation. So what I did was I put in a note sidechain. And if you don't select the input or an input signal for the note sidechain, it just takes its own input. So in this case, every time a MIDI note is played on this track, which is its own track, it triggers the sidechain, okay? And then the sidechain is used to trigger the rate on its neighboring LFO. So basically, every time one of these notes hits, it triggers the rate on this LFO to spike, okay? And then when this LFO rate spikes, it changes how fast it cycles through the semitones, which, as we know, basically affects how fast it cycles through all these samples. So every time one of these notes hits, what happens is it cycles through another one of these samples. And so it basically, I've gone and automated myself a little melody. Essentially, it's a song that writes itself. And not only that, but I wanted the ability to change it up or down an octave. So I added on this mod called buttons right here. Okay, and I took A and I grabbed a pitch and I lowered it by 12 semitones, because you know 12 semitones is an octave, right? Let's get it there, whatever. And then I used B and brought it up 12 semitones. So essentially what I've done is created a button. If I want to hear these samples an octave lower, I hit that button. If I want to hear them an octave higher, I hit that button. Okay, so let's have a listen. And if I wanted an octave lower, and if I wanted an octave higher, okay, so again, we're going to start light with these videos so that we can ease into it a little bit, because we can really go and do some insane stuff inside Bitwig. But the takeaway from this is basically, did you ever think about using an audio sidechain to trigger the amount of an LFO, to trigger what would you call it? The fluttering of the pitch or the frequencies of a resonator bank on your sub bass? No, probably not. And will you ever use it? I don't know, probably not, but it's an interesting concept. I think you could take this principle and apply it to something else, maybe not a sub bass, and you can get some pretty groovy musical sounds out of it, right? So maybe remember that one. Secondly, did you ever think to add 2 buttons to your multi-sampler or a sampler and then use one to lower it an octave and one to raise it an octave? I don't know, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but it's a good thing to do, right? Like you could do that. You could do the same thing with glide. You can have just a single button to crank your glide all the way up. But it's just, don't forget about the buttons mod. They're pretty cool and they're pretty handy. And don't forget, it's not just that when you load up a buttons mod, it can only affect buttons that are inside this thing. You can use it to affect knobs, right? Okay, I think I should make a video that explains that a little bit better. But just play around with this buttons mod, okay? And the last thing to remember is that you can use mods to affect other mods. And if you're gonna load up a note sidechain and you don't select an input, it uses the notes of its own MIDI track, okay? All right, guys, I think that's basically it. Oh, like again, on this, all I did was load up a delay and then the feedback effects. So basically, I loaded up a reverb, and so basically the original sound will pass through unaffected, and then the delayed signals that come afterwards go through a very wet version of reverb so that they sound like they're bouncing like into the distance, and then of course just a chorus on full, because why not? Right? I think this is probably pretty typical for you guys. I'm sure you've tried this reverb after the delay thing a bunch of times. You can get some cool stuff, especially on vocals, doing that trick. Okay? All right, let me know what you've come up with. Leave it in the comment section. Maybe email me. Whatever. Let's do some insane shit together. Let's make something crazy here. Okay, and I'll keep dinking around, I'll keep messing with stuff, and then in a week or two I'll upload another video and show what I've found. And I hope that you've maybe taken away something from this video. I'm sure this is not an appealing song, and they're not really meant to be songs. They're not meant to be appealing in any way. It's just a more of an exploration of working outside the box and seeing what we can come up with, and seeing if it's applicable in any way to a real song or not. Okay? All right, guys, I hope you subscribe to my channel, and if you don't, that's okay. I hope you have a good day anyway, although I would really like you to subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next video, which will be, well, I don't know, but I hope to see you there. Okay? All right, guys, take care.